Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we are going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Rafael dos Anjos and Paul Felder. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so Paul Felder versus Rafael dos Anjos. This is an interesting fight for the lightweight division. Now, it's not the one we expected. It was originally supposed to be Islam Makhachev versus Rafael dos Anjos, but about 5-6 days before the fight, Makhachev had to pull out due to injuries. It was kind of up in the air as far as what was going to happen. We waited like a day or so, and then Paul Felder, like the professional that he is, steps up and takes the fight just on 5 or 6 days notice. So super short notice for the main event, still staying 5 rounds. I'm super glad to see it happen. I'm really a big fan of both fighters, so I'm glad they stepped up and kept it going. And it's good for the lightweight division because on the one hand, you've got Dos Anjos, former champion of the division, only lost to Khabib and Tony Ferguson before moving up to welterweight. He's had his last, 7 or 8 fights at 170 pounds. He's looked good for the most part, but he's lost 4 of his last 5. They were kind of some rough ones, and I think it showed him that 170 pounds is not for him. That is not the division that he's going to be able to compete at the very top, possibly win a belt. So he's moving back down to 155. And then on the other hand, you got Paul Felder. He is just a stalwart of the division, stays at the top, fighting basically the who's who up there, and always turning in great performances. So it's awesome to see that these two lock up in the main event, and we kind of get to see what happens when Dos Anjos comes back to 155. And, Paul Felder was talking about a possible retirement after his last bout, so I'm glad to see him back, and we'll see how he does in this one. So let's take a look at each individual fighter. On the one hand, Rafael dos Anjos. Man, I like him. I like him a lot. Been watching him. He's been in the UFC forever. Seen a lot of his fights. And here's the thing. He is really good everywhere. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a second. You just told me that he lost 4 of his last 5 fights. 4 out of his last 5. He dropped them. How in the world can this guy not be weak anywhere? And I know what you're thinking. That sounds a little bit weird. But the reason for that is all those fights, he lost them all the exact same way. He lost them because he was dominated in the wrestling department. Typically, it is pretty hard. I would tell you if he was in the correct division, which is lightweight, it's pretty hard to dominate him in wrestling. As a matter of fact, there's only been one lightweight who has ever gone out there and dominated him in the wrestling department. And that man's name is Khabib. And surprise, surprise, he dominates everybody. Nobody's been able to figure out his wrestling yet. All the other guys who beat him, his last 4 or 5 that he dropped, those were all in the welterweight division. And guys that are 170 pounds and elite wrestlers, they're too much for Dos Anjos. His frame, he's just not big enough to handle that. They're too much for him. Covington, Usman, Michael Kessia, those guys. He's not going to ever be able to handle that. So that's why he had to drop back down. And when he's at 155, that's why I say he doesn't have any weak points. Now, that being said, his bread and butter, it's his stand-up. That's what he goes to. That's what he loves. He is very proficient in Muay Thai. He does have a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Don't get me wrong. But when it's up to him, he typically keeps it as a stand-up fight. And I like his stand-up. There's nothing crazy about it, but what he does really well. So number 1, he's got the jab. Now, he doesn't use the jab too much, doesn't go to it all the time or anything. Works it perfectly, though. He's got really good timing on it. Fights out of the southpaw stance. He knows how to get it off and land it against traditional fighters, even though they may be taller and longer. And he keeps them honest with it. Works that jab out there, pumps it. Guys can't really get what they want going, and he can use it to set up the straight left hand. And that's his power shot, and he lands that really well. When he throws that 1-2, when he comes in with that straight left, guys feel it. He shoots it really straight, shoots it really hard. I like the left hand that Dos Anjos has. And it's not just behind the jab that he works it great. He also uses it awesome as a counter. And then the other part of his stand-up that I really think stands out for him, the kind that really shines, is his low kicks. Oh, I remember when he was at 155 pounds and he used to use those low kicks and he tore some dudes up with them. He just shoots them out there. It's really quick. He's got no tell on him. Guys don't see him coming, and you can tell that they hurt. When they land, they hurt. Now, once he was at 170 pounds, he wasn't really using it quite as much. I think it was because he was worried about, shooting that kick out there and getting taken down more with wrestling. He used it a little bit against Kevin Lee because Kevin Lee is also a guy who was at 155 originally and then moved up to 170. But he didn't use it as much as I would have liked, and I'm hoping that he gets back to it in this fight. And then on the other hand, you've got Paul Felder. Now, Paul Felder, he always shows up to fight. Every single time you see him, nobody ever leaves a Paul Felder fight saying, oh, I wish there would have been more action. Oh, that wasn't really quite what I signed up for. Maybe the next fight will have enough for me. Like Paul Felder always brings it. It is always great to see him in there. And this one should be no exception to that rule. So Paul Felder comes from a traditional martial arts background, specifically Taekwondo and karate. Although that's not really what you see him work. That's not the style that he uses in MMA. He's kept his love for striking. That's primarily what it is, what he does. That's what he likes to go to. But now that he's in MMA, his stand-up is built around Muay Thai. And what I love about Felder is I love his aggression, number one. Like I just said, he comes and he brings it. And he comes forward and he moves forward and he tries to land hard shots. He's got a good overhand right. He's got a good counter left hook. He has got some very good low kicks of his own. Like Paul Felder shows up and he brings all those tools with him. All of those, he is well-rounded in his complete stand-up game. However, that being said, he does have some weak points. Number one, he can become a little bit predictable in his striking. You know, when you look at him, sometimes he'll just go to that right hand left hook a little bit too much. He'll either shoot the right straight left hook or he'll go with the overhand right left hook. And he can become a little bit predictable in that. The other thing is, he doesn't fight that well going backwards. When he's moving forward, he can be on his front foot and he can kind of dictate the pace and how things are going. He does a lot better. But if you can push him back, if you can beat him to the punch, if you can get him off of what he likes to do, I don't think that he adapts really well. That's how Dan Hooker was able to get things going in that split, you know, when he eked out that split decision win. It's because Dan Hooker was a little bit more busy. He was beating him to the punch a little bit more, and it would throw off Felder's timing. And I guess the other thing that I have to mention is we don't really know how he does off of his back. He's got a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, so he's certainly not going to be, you know, some bum out there or anything like that. But that's not Felder's game. We haven't seen him off his back. That's not what he does. As a matter of fact, the only time we see him on the ground is when he likes to get in the ground and pound. And at that point, he lands some vicious elbows, does some good work up there. But even that isn't really his thing. He's a stand-up fighter. So the question is, what's it going to look like when these two step into the octagon on Saturday night? So I think this is going to be a fight that's really built off of exchanges. Primarily going to be stand-up. Don't think there's going to be too much wrestling or grappling or anything like that, although it will come into play a little bit. And in the stand-up, I think like I said, I think it'll be dictated by exchanges. And what I mean by that is it's not going to just be super fast, high, crazy work rate. It's not just going to be constantly moving all around the octagon with a whole bunch of movement, and there's just a constant back and forth flow between guys or something like that. You know, one guy applying crazy pressure. I don't think that's going to go this way. I think it'll be fight, exchange, reset, exchange, reset, exchange, reset. I think that will be the flow of the fight, particularly early. And I think Dos Anjos is going to get the better of those exchanges. I think he's a little bit faster. I think he gets his low kick a little bit quicker. I think he's going to be able to land his jab a little bit more because he's the southpaw going into this fight. I think he'll build angles a little bit and get that jab going a little bit more. I also think he's more comfortable going backwards. So when Felder does want to come forward, because Felder's more aggressive, he's going to try to land hard shots because that's how he likes to throw. He comes forward and he lands heavy. I think Dos Anjos is going to be able to counter that good with that straight left. And I don't think that's going to be the same vice versa. I don't think when Dos Anjos decides to come forward, when he wants to dictate things, I don't think that's going to go well for Felder. I don't think he fights great going backwards. So I think in those ones, when he moves backwards, it's going to be a little bit more defensive. When Dos Anjos does try to come forward, I see Felder trying to go to that counter left hook. And look, I'm a huge fan of a counter left hook. When a guy uses his left hook as a counter and it works well, it looks great. But it's a little bit more difficult to get off against a southpaw. And I don't know if Felder's going to have the timing or the speed that he's going to be able to use that left hook and land it against Dos Anjos. So I think in these stand-up exchanges, when it starts out early on in the fight, I think that we're going to see a slight upper hand go to Dos Anjos. I think he's going to win those. Now, the first time that changes, or I shouldn't even say the change, the first time we see a change in the fight, I believe it's going to be when Dos Anjos goes to his wrestling. He's used it a little bit in the past. We've even seen him use it a little bit at welterweight. Took down Colby Covington once, took down Kevin Lee. And even prior to that, when he was at 155, he used it. I think he'll go to it here. Not super heavy, not extensively, but he will score a couple takedowns when he's got Felder down there. He's going to be able to control him a little bit. He'll land some ground and pound. I mean, he's got a good ground game. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 4th degree black belt. So when he's down there, he'll be able to do some stuff with it. But Felder will pop back up and he'll get back to the striking. But that's going to make a difference. It's going to wear Felder out. It's going to look good for the judges. It's going to help Dos Anjos to dominate the fight even more. And then we get into the last phase of the fight and why I'm taking Dos Anjos in this one. And it's because of the cardio. This is a 5-round fight. Dos Anjos has been preparing for a 5-round fight. Dos Anjos' cardio is solid, always has been. Don't get me wrong, got a little bit of question here because the 155 used to be hard to make, and now he's cutting back down to it after being all those years at 170, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. But Dos Anjos has always been solid with the cardio, so I'm going to stick with him on this one. I'm going to say that it's fine, particularly because he's been preparing for this 5-round fight. Paul Felder, on the other hand, he's only went 5 rounds once. That was with Dan Hooker in his last fight. And he's taking this on short notice. I mean, as short as you can get. 5-6 days notice he takes this fight. I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to go out there and he's going to be able to hang with Dos Anjos at the pace that he wants to put on after he's landing the shots, landing some takedowns, and come rounds 4 and 5. Paul Felder still got enough gas in the tank to make this one happen. So as much as I like him, although I really like both guys, I'm going to have to take Dos Anjos in this one. I think he's going to come out. He'll start out winning a little bit and then slowly but surely dominate as the fight goes on more and more. And if Felder gasses out, I think, as tough as he is, if he gasses out, I think Dos Anjos ends up being able to get a stoppage. But if I had to make a prediction, it's going to be Dos Anjos by decision. So let me know what you guys think. Is Dos Anjos going to come back? Is he going to be able to come back to the lightweight division and make a splash? He comes out here, gets a good performance against Felder, and then try to lines up some more things? Or is it not going to work out that well after spending all that time at 170? And what's next for Felder after this one too? Let me know what you guys think.